Hey everyone, and welcome to the initial Battle for Azeroth Gearing Guide. Today we are going to be working out how to get you raid ready rapidly, and of course ready for Mythic Plus as well, over the initial weeks of Battle for Azeroth. But first, a big thank you to today's sponsor, Discord. They are making big moves with their overlay, and most of their new features are actually already with you, and it's really cool. So you can use the overlay to browse servers, view channels that you're talking in, manage them, and it now even supports text channels. So you can view text channels in the overlay, and even better, you will soon be able to pin them in game for when you've hidden the overlay, and this lets you see your guild Discord chat right there in game with you, as if it's a part of your default UI. Now this comes along with many other features. We've got priority speaker, which has just been added, right in time of course for using Discord to raid. It will of course also handle your notifications, and they still have some new functionality like the home bar on the way, and all of this is done in a way that's super easy to use and customizable, meaning that you can easily slot it into your existing WoW UI, plus the slick design just makes it blend in just about seamlessly with anything. So it's a brilliant feature, and they're a great sponsor to have on board. Now the first thing to do is talk about gear in BFA and to understand the item levels of this expansion. Of course it's a new expansion, and then with the item level squish as well, it might be a bit disorienting. So you're probably going to hit max level between item level 285 and 295. That's pretty much your starting eye level for this expansion. So let's cover the various sources of gear that are available to you as well as their item levels. So normal dungeons yield 310, heroics yield 325, and mythics are 340. You can enter mythic dungeons at any time, of course, with a pre-made group. However, you will have to be 305 in order to queue for heroics. Then another potential source of gear early on is actually killing rares. Each rare will drop a bit of gear that's scaled to your character level, so that could fill out any initial holes in your gear, but it probably won't be that powerful overall. Past that, world quests, of course, are here. They drop between, I believe, 290 and 340, with the higher item levels being a bit more rare and coming from your emissary cache as well. This all scales based on your own item level, which keeps them relevant over time. Then crafting is another big source of gear. There are item level 300 crafted sets that are available like straight up for a fresh alt, but of course 300's not that powerful. Now what really matters is that past this there are crafted 355, 370 and 385 bits of gear. However, they're bound on pickup, and the latter two require resources from the Uldir raid. Then with engineering, there is actually a 340 crafted helm that's BOP, but of course it requires engineering. However, it is thankfully quite cheap to make in comparison to the other ones, and the pattern is from Honored Rep with either the Zandalari or Proudmoore Admiralty, so you can probably get that quite quickly. Now, speaking of reputations, they're quite a bit more useful now. So each rep has an item level 320 cloak at Honored, then you'll get at least one rep to Honored as you level up, so that cloak will be a handy bit of starter gear. Now, the reps have one bit of 340 gear per armor type at Revered, and then one bit at 355 at Exalted. And finally, the Champions of Azeroth have a 355 helm for everyone at Exalted, and that's important because helms are an Azerite slot, so it will be quite a nice power boost. Now, it is worth doing, say, like the zone quests for the sake of the rep that they give you, plus completing all the storylines is needed for Pathfinder, and you'll want to get Pathfinder anyway for the increased mount speed. Finally, the world bosses drop gear, and in the period of time leading up to raids and Mythic Plus, I believe they're item level 345 baseline. Now, during these first few weeks, the Titan Forging cap will be 355, so that's kind of your target. So our guaranteed sources of 355 gear are the reputations, crafted gear per armor type, and then your 355 helm from Champions of Azeroth at Exalted. Past that, if you want 355s, you'll just have to hope for Titan Forging to be nice to you in, say, Mythic Dungeons. But what we really need to talk about, though, is Azerite gear and the Heart of Azeroth, because that's important to gearing and player power. So you will get the Heart of Azeroth at the start of your leveling journey. As you collect Azerite, it will become more powerful as time goes on, and this happens through two different mechanisms. So as you do content, you will earn artifact power. That will increase the power level of your Heart of Azeroth. Now, it will gain 2 item levels for every power level that it gains. So it starts off at eye level 280 and level 1, but by the time it hits level 20, it'll have an item level of 318. Now, the first trade of the raid Azerite gear for Mythic is about like 25 to 28 levels of Heart of Azeroth, so a base item level of about 326, which is kind of your goal. Now, on top of that, for every rep level you get with the Champions of Azeroth faction, Magni will empower your Heart of Azeroth by 15 item levels. Now, this happens at Friendly, Honored, and Revered. Now, Exalted does not have an item level bump. Instead, that's where you get the 355 Azerite Helm. So this means that you'll be aiming for your Heart of Azeroth to be between like 360 and 370 by the time raids come out. So how do we level up our Heart of Azeroth, and how do we gain Champions of Azeroth reputation? Well, the Heart of Azeroth levels up by collecting artifact power, which has numerous sources. The largest weekly source is the the weekly Island Expedition quest. It's to get 40,000 Azerite through Island Expeditions. That will net you 2,500 artifact power, and it should take about 7 runs. Now, assuming those runs are being done in Mythic, you'll also get 300 per run, of course, run that's a win. So doing 7 Mythic Island Expeditions will net you 4,600 artifact power because of that. This is the most time-efficient way that you can do it, so focus on that first. Now, while that's pretty good, while on the islands, you can bump into quests that give you 750 each. After that, the World Quest drops 500, or the World Boss Quest drops 500, World Quests are about 150 normally. The Emissaries are normally like 500 each, but Champions of Azeroth defaults to 750, and some Emissary quests can actually have bonus Azerite as well. So initially, I would focus on doing the Island Expeditions, and then just clearing the map of high-value World Quests and completing your Emissaries. Of course, you'll want to do the War Campaign anyway, and the core steps of that will give you artifact power. Now, Dungeons and PvP do give you some. The Daily Heroic is actually worth doing in terms of time efficiency, but past that, it doesn't, you know, they're not a great way of doing it. And Warfronts are also a decent source, but they won't be open for a few weeks. The War Campaign will also unlock followers and the mission board, and that will get you some artifact power as well. As for reputations with the Champions of Azeroth faction, just do every world quest that pops up. If you can, use a Champions of Azeroth contract. These are made by scribes, and if you use it, you will get an extra 10 rep with the Champions of Azeroth faction for completing any world quest. Of course, you can use the contracts for any faction, but I just recommend this one, and that effect lasts until you apply a contract for a new faction. Okay, let's do some overall guidance, because I've laid out a bunch of information, but let's boil it down into an actionable list. So the first thing that you want to do is play the world quest system right. Remember that world quest rewards scale based on your average item level. This means that you will want to quickly increase your average item level so that the world quest rewards bump up in quality. So once you cap, if you've got any super low item level bits of gear, then kill a rare that drops gear in that slot. It won't be great, but say replacing like a 240 with a 280, that's pretty useful. Then you will almost certainly be honored with one faction, so go and pick up your honored cloak. It's 320. Then if you've got loads of money, you can just buy the blue crafted stuff that's level 300, or just craft it for yourself. You might actually have some resources because you ideally will have been using the scrapper as you've been leveling up, so that's a pretty good thing that you can do. Now, that could help to bump up your initial item level quite a bit. The next thing I would do is kill the world boss. It might be a bit scummy doing this at a rubbish item level, but come on, they're meant to be zerged anyway. Now, at this point, you'll probably have bumped up the world quest rewards a little bit, so I'd probably, and you'll also just be probably wrapping up your gameplay session anyway, so that's when I would clear out the map of world quests. Now, on the topic of world quests, you really want to do the war campaign early, because it will unlock world quests in the other faction's continent, which is dead important. So from this point onwards, you still want to be doing world quests, you want to be focusing on emissaries, you want to be clearing the map as much as you can for faction reputation. Remember that the factions give you 340 gear at Revered and 355 at Exalted, though do note that hitting Exalted before the raid releases may not be feasible. Now, as I said, increasing our average item level is the most powerful thing we can do, because that powers up our world quest rewards. That's completely the name of the game. So if you've got a group of skilled players like friends, I would recommend doing mythic dungeons as early as is possible. They'll be really challenging with low gear, but a coordinated group should be able to clear them. This will get you a fair amount of 340 gear, and some of that might even Titan Forge. And if you do this at like item level 310, well, this will greatly increase your average item level, and therefore greatly increase the power of your world quest gear, which you can then use to handily fill in the gaps in your gear. So of course, on top of this, you'll want to knock out the island expeditions. They give a large amount of artifact power, which is super important when it comes to using any of the new Azerite gear that you get, and also pumping up your Heart of Azeroth. Now, while you're dungeoning, you may come across some hydro cores, I believe. These are used to craft the initial 355 crafted epics. So these epics require you to be BFA profession skill 120 out of 150, but otherwise they just cost gold from vendors. So these will be guaranteed 355s, and I would recommend picking up the crafting profession for your armor type. You can also take up engineering for the 340 Azerite helm. That's not too hard to acquire, but you'll eventually replace that with the Champions of Azeroth Exalted 355 helm, although of course it will take a little while to get to Exalted. Now, on the topic of Azerite gear, it does not Titan Forge. and you can only get it through sources that are not infinitely grindable. So the best stuff initially will come from doing weekly dungeons, which of course are on a weekly lockout. So overall 3 or 4 weeks until raids open, you just want to clear all your mythic dungeons. Ideally, in those the period of weeks, you should have like 25 plus in your Heart of Azeroth. It should be over iLvl 360. You probably want 3 bits of 340 Azerite gear, and the rest of your gear will be between 340 and 355, depending on the Titan forging, the reputation gear that you get, and whether you choose to pursue the crafted epics. In my view, that is a very quick path to being at a high item level. And what's nice about hitting that high item level early on, in my view, is you can maybe level up an alt, you can hunt down some mounts. It just frees you up to do the other things in Battle for Azeroth when, you know, you're not stressing to hit any sort of, benchmark or whatever for when raids come out, because you're doing it efficiently. Now, that said, whenever raids come out, that's also when Warfronts come out, and that will open up some more efficient ways of gearing, such as the guaranteed 370s from Warfronts, and then, of course, any of the free gear from LFR. So keep that stuff in mind, but that is the initial Battle for Azeroth gearing guide. I hope you find it useful. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.